Right. Let's see how far we can make it this time. I'm kinda hoping that this next dungeon doesn't have any gimmicks, but that might be asking for too much around here. Part of me is actually kinda tempted to fast forward at the moment. It's not like we're doing anything that could be construed as grinding, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot actually happening. There's no denying that it's a bit of a waste for me to get back to the village right now here. Seriously, we've already done everything we can last time, and we spoke to everyone in town, got all the information available, and we should have just moved on to whatever the next location is. And apparently I'm not gonna go to the desert just yet. Sorry, I seem to be confusing myself in my own footage. I should have written notes of what I was doing and why. As a side note, it feels like Azul is hitting the weakest out of everyone on the team at this point. Understandable. Black mages aren't all that well known for their physical attributes after all, and it's certainly a nice shift from when Carmine was the weakest hitting guy on the team. Dear God, why have I not just sold that shield that we bought a long time ago? Okay, there was definitely no point in me going all the way back to the castle to talk to the princess again. There is no way that all that was for the sake of getting into a bed. There's plenty of cheap inns in the game so far. Yeah, no point in talking to the king here again. Why the hell did I try to do that? Was I drunk when I was recording this session, or did I assume the king, who knew how airships worked, had to be the only king that we've met so far? Hell, maybe a bit of both. Well, at least we're back on the right continent. That's gotta be worth something. And apparently, griffins have become more common around here. Granted, we're more powerful, so one of them isn't gonna be too much of a problem for us now. Still, I kinda flinched seeing them considering we had our first casualty in the game, facing off against just one of these damn birds. Guess that makes it just a bit more embarrassing that we lost someone when we first ran into one. Okay, that flyer looks pretty weird. Kind of a mix between a dragonfly and I don't know what. Eesh. The Gorgon is at least a more understandable looking bug creature. And again, I have no clue what's going on in terms of the art direction for the monsters in this game so far. Just, are they trying to be scary or cute? Wait, what? The thing ominously floating above the desert was some kind of mystical tree? Oh, son of a bitch, that kind of gimmick already sounds like a pain in the ass to deal with. Really? Changing weaknesses partway through a battle? That sounds like the sort of thing I'd expect from a Shin Megami Tensei boss that's either near the end of the game or an outright bonus boss. What the hell is that kind of bastard doing this early in a Final Fantasy game? We've only restored one of the 4 crystals. I'm pretty sure that means we're painfully early in this adventure. Now, it probably isn't actually that bad, but dear God, just reading that description of the next major enemy made me reflexively check how much footage I have for the 3D remake of this game so far. And I was genuinely considering scrapping my recording of the 3D remake and then uninstalling that version of the game from my computer just thinking about it. Hopefully I'll be able to get away with just using physical attacks on that wizard. I suppose it's a bit funny that when I first saw that floating tree over the desert, I thought it was either a furball of some kind or a massive tumbleweed. Not a mystical tree turned into a floating fortress. Hell, a mystical tree turned into a floating fortress this early on feels like it's a little too epic for this stage of the game. But then, we gained an airship before we even finished the absolute first quest of the game to save the princess and break the curse of the Dijin. I think, this game is just gonna do its own damn thing. Huh. Surprisingly easy to mount chocobos in this game. Come to think of it, I don't think chocobos were rideable in Final Fantasy 1 or 4 as far as I remember. We just had the big fat one in 4 that could have been used to store items. It's kind of interesting to note that, considering that they are a franchise mainstay creature, in most Final Fantasy worlds, those ostrich lookalikes are the beast of burden that replaces horses. Probably because it's easier to animate two-legged animals or something to that effect. For some reason, I thought that the first time we'd see them in this series, it would be done in a way that made them feel a bit more meaningful. Instead, in this game, I just accidentally entered a forest with some chocobos, just lazing about, grabbed one, and then casually dismounted from it. Hell, I probably should have been more weirded out that the world seemed to end so close to this village, with a rather sheer drop from some jagged-looking cliffs. I certainly don't recall seeing anything like that in any of the other games when it came to the world map. Part of me feels like we should have more Phoenix Downs, but good God, just getting one feels absurdly expensive, and some of these stores don't even sell them. So, eesh. If nothing else, this stage of the game is doing a good job of draining our wallet and keeping us pretty damn poor, all things considered. We'll see how long that lasts. Yes, ma'am. We saw them before we even walked into this village. Huh. It's very rare that I've ever heard of light being considered a destructive force in any fantasy story. Usually it's darkness that's the destructive force, and the heroes are the ones that fight for the sake of the light, which, yeah, is probably what's going on in this story as a whole, but... So we're not actually in the world map, just a map of the floating section of land. Again, a very fascinating idea. It really makes me wish that those world-building elements were given to a game that had an actual narrative and good storytelling instead of this bare-bones thing. In fact, I'm kind of shocked that I can't think of any games that actually pulled something like You Are the Warriors of Darkness, trying to save the world from the oppression of the light. I'm afraid to some degree we do need to surrender to the need for technology, especially since we need to travel around quite a bit from one quest to the next. Hell, part of what we're doing is trying to find a way to make a new airship. Probably because the next airship is going to be good enough to allow us to fly off this floating continent and actually explore the rest of the world, whatever that looks like. It's funny, I thought part of what made Final Fantasy IV special was the fact that we had 3 separate world maps in a single game. The regular world, the underworld, and then the moon. But it already feels like this game is going to have at least 2 for us to travel around. I'm pretty sure they stopped with the multiple world maps idea by the time they get to the PlayStation 1 console. Period, you know, with Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. I'm not too sure if and when they stop that with the earlier games in the series. It's definitely another thing that's going to make going through Final Fantasies 5 and 6 interesting when we're done with this one. Hell, one of these days I'm actually going to have to record Final Fantasy 6. I haven't felt especially grabbed by it in the times I've tried, but it is called one of the absolute best games in the franchise. I feel like an ass if I tried to skip over it. I doubt that running around the continent on a chocobo is going to gain us all that much. Still, no harm in checking and making sure. Oh yeah, Definitely not worth it if all we got was gnomish bread. Sure, it could have been worse, but still, that item lost any and all importance the instant the Pixel Remaster was released. The sight spell kind of runs into the exact same problem. It was made with the assumption that the player would have certain limits, and the Pixel Remaster removed that specific limit. I certainly wouldn't say that it somehow spoiled the game. If anything, I might just say that it's spoiling me. I just continually get annoyed if I run into a game that doesn't have a way to open an in-game map. It's funny how that can be one of the easiest deal breakers for me to run into when I'm trying to find a role-player game to play through, but I can certainly deal without it, as the PSP version of Final Fantasy IV showed. Yeah, definitely tougher to tell when I'm supposed to sell items in a game like this. You can't tell if you're being a hoarder for not selling things and clearing up your inventory, or if you're possibly screwing yourself over for later and you'll actually need that. Really makes it clear why that sort of thing isn't done all that often in role-player games in general. Though again, we're gonna see something like this when I finally get around to Final Fantasy V. I suppose you could say the same thing about Final Fantasy XII as well, though. It's been a damn long time since I played that game, and that was the PlayStation 2 version of it, not the Zodiac Edition. I've heard good things about the Zodiac Edition, though. Possibly should have fast-forwarded there, considering how long we were in that store. I kinda wish the equipment stores would tell us what classes can equip what weapons. Generally, it's usually enough to show us, which of the player characters on the team can equip a given thing, but again, this game's unique gimmick is that everyone can change their classes on a whim, and the boss designs encourage you to change to just the right unit combination to deal with whatever comes next. You're not allowed to really be complacent in the boss fights, and I'm the sort of gamer that likes to get complacent. There's no getting around that. Wonder how long it's gonna take for me to gain enough money to buy everything in this store. Hell, if anything, this is about as good a time as any to start grinding and other things. Not that I've got any real clue how much we need to prepare for what comes next. I'm just using the idea of buying everything we can from the various stores here as a good barometer for how much more we need to do before we're ready to move on. For all I know, that's not going to be a great way to tell just how much more we need to do to prepare for the troubles ahead. It's not like I've read ahead in whatever guide I'm using when playing through this game to figure out what classes we specifically need to be to get past the next major fight. And hell, I've been using working on the LP of this game as the way to figure out what I should be doing in the 3D remake. With each clip I upload to YouTube, I sit down with the 3D remake and record a bit more footage around the point where the clip for this game takes place. Sure, it's not a perfect system. There's some differences to the 3D remake, some subtle and others far more easily noticeable. There's also the fact that I've been making some mistakes in my playthrough of this game, and I'm sure at least a few of those mistakes are gonna haunt me again when I start commenting on the footage of the 3D remake. Ugh. Ah, well, at least it looks like some of those mistakes are going to be easy enough for me to avoid making in the remake, from removing the status mini a bit too soon when we had to go to the dragon statue, to trying to walk into the floating castle in the desert. Those are the sorts of obvious mistakes that I can easily avoid, but some of the class choices I make, that's gonna be a bit shakier, especially since the classes and equipment will feel different in the 3D remake. That's enough talk about the alternate version of this game. Let's focus on the version we're currently going through. Okay, definitely a very empty castle, that's for sure. Yeah, not a single person at all here. I know we already heard that a member of the court here decided to turn a mystical tree into his mobile fortress and probably captured everybody here, but considering he kidnapped the king and all his soldiers, you'd think the guy would be doing something with the original castle. Maybe summoning monsters to fortify it, maybe redecorating it or something since he now owns it. Seriously, I know he's a villain, but is it too much to ask that the villain do some things that make a bit more sense? He's taken over the kingdom. Do more to make the kingdom feel like it's his, not abandoned. Hell, maybe part of my problem is the fact that Final Fantasy I had a pretty basic storyline for the most part, and yet they did a good job of conveying what you needed to do, and while I might need to check on a guide to figure out where to go next, that had more to do with the fact that the PSP version of that game that I played through did not have an in-game map. I should have probably checked the golden torch earlier, since to be fair, that does seem like a bit of an obvious trigger. Oh yeah, we're definitely getting more money in this castle, that's for sure. Not too sure why some of those chests have just 100 and others in the same room have thousands. It's not a big thing, but still a bit confusing. Right, so we're gonna need a special key to open that door. And we've got the same problem with the other door. Bloody hell, I was hoping that this castle would give us some means of taking it to the floating tree castle in the desert. And good God, no matter how I try to word it, that concept just feels odd to think about. Again, it feels like the sort of location I'd expect from an absolutely major enemy, not just another random quest line. Dear God. Well, it seems like we're done in the castle for the moment. Time to move on to the next location, whatever that happens to be. Dear God, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason where we're going at this point. I swear this game feels like it was designed from the ground up to be so utterly annoying that you needed a guide to figure things out as a way to make up for a perceived mistake from Final Fantasy II. I suppose I've seen some online comments that Final Fantasy II's dungeon design was painfully lackluster. Personally, I was never able to get far enough into that game to feel that that was an issue. The level-up system just felt like too much of a deal-breaker for me as I tried to figure out how to get stronger, and good God, the best way to make yourself more durable was to smack yourself across the face. Okay, why the hell did I come back to this village? Yeah, no point in me coming back to talk to Sid and his wife. We've already done all we can with them until we get to the point where we receive whatever is needed for a new airship. Presumably one that's better than the one we destroyed at the start of the game. At the very least, I hope it's going to be able to fly over mountains. Right, guess I'm gonna go back to the village of the ancients for a while. At the very least, the money we gained from the castle should do a good job of letting us gather some more equipment and spells. It still doesn't solve the problem that I have absolutely no clue how we're actually supposed to get to the floating tree fortress, though. Really feels like we moved from Mithril equipment a bit fast, but maybe I just consider Mithril to be more important than it actually is in Final Fantasy. Again, in Lord of the Rings, Mithril is some absolutely amazing metal to work with, the stuff of legends. But in Final Fantasy, it's just another class of item and not an especially high class. Hell, we are graduating from it before we've even figured out where the second crystal is. Should I ask why the Black Mage is allowed to equip some bows, but not this particular one? Apparently, the elemental arrows are out of the question as well. Dear God, we apparently need the explicit archer class to do that. I severely doubt we're going to use the explicit archer class much in this game, though. Not with the way this game seems to be treating the class system. Seriously, there hasn't been an in-game tutorial that discusses how the class level-up system works, what leveling up in a given class grants you. And frankly, there are going to be moments where regardless of how much you like a class, you're going to have to leave it behind altogether. In at least this version of the game, that's going to be an issue with the Red Mage sooner than the Monk, Warrior, or Black Mage. Final Fantasy III just doesn't feel like it was built to favor a class that's trying to be a jack of all trades. Hell, the bosses are designed with the expectation that you will have the absolute best possible specialists to take the threat down, and that you'll somehow know what composition you're going to need before you get there. Good God, I'm not a fan of that kind of game design decision. Ah well, it was my choice to deal with it for this game and its remake. We're just gonna have to keep toughing it out.